ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, so today's video, I'm going to be talking about Blood Hunt, Black Panther, #1, written by Cheryl Lynn Eaton, with art by Farid Karami, and color by Andrew Dahlhaus. I'll also be talking about Midnight Suns, Blood Hunt, #1, written by Brian Hill, with art by Jermaine Peralta and color by Arthur Hesley. So for this one, I'm going to be kind of jumping around a little bit, so I apologize. This is one of those things I kind of have this stream of conscious thought about these two Blood Hunt tie-ins, and I kind of feel like if I talk about tie-ins, this is kind of how it's probably going to go, because there's a lot of them. Let's just be honest with ourselves, and I honestly don't think all of them are created equal. But I will definitely say, these two tie-ins,
the cream will rise to the top, oh yeah.
I think these might be two of my new favorites. So yeah, I know I've been hypercritical of Blood Hunt just because of, you know, just how much it has in the way of tie-ins. But once again, as I said, I am willing to give this event a little bit of rope based on, you know, some of the people that are going to be involved with it. Like, case in point, I really like the Dracula tie-in because it is written by Danny Lore, and they are a fantastic writer. I also really like what Brian Hill did with Blade, so obviously Midnight Suns is kind of a no-brainer. And while I've not read a lot of Cheryl Lynn Eaton, I have, just in this one issue, have become even more of a fan of her work. So, to get into this, basically the reason why I want to talk about this, I'm particularly interested in Midnight Suns, and kind of always was for the most part, just because it's Brian Hill. He's the guy who's been writing Blade for the last year, and I feel like if anyone is going to have a handle on how Blade should be depicted, it's going to be him. And what I love is that, in a way, Brian Hill kind of gives us that same Blade that he has been giving us all this time, but at the same time giving us a little bit of what Jed MacKay has been cooking. But I feel like he does it in a bit better of a way, which makes me even sadder that he's not the one overseeing, you know, this crossover event. It actually makes it that much more of a head scratcher to me. I mean, I think we kind of know why. I think it actually has more to do with the fact that Brian Hill just doesn't have that kind of time. So this is very likely why Jed MacKay is doing this and not him. That said, what I appreciate here is that Brian Hill gives us a little more insight into maybe why Blade is the way he is right now. And it goes back to some things I talked about before. I keep saying it, this is not Blade. I mean, it is Blade, but he is clearly possessed, and there's multiple moments throughout Midnight Suns that basically kind of let you know that's the case. I mean, the way he's talking, the way that he is unaliving people close to him, people who he has personally trained as vampire hunters, he is unaliving them, and he doesn't seem incredibly happy about it. Like, there's moments where we literally see him brought to tears as he is doing it, because it seems like whatever is going on, he is being piloted and he is just a passenger. That is kind of my take on this. And really the whole thing being that Tulip, a character who was also introduced in Brian Hill's Blade series, she has been tasked, as of that Blade series, to try to take down Blade should he ever get out of pocket. And well, I think enveloping the entire Earth in Dark Force dimension and unleashing the entire might of the vampires of Earth on the world is probably about as out of pocket as you'll probably get. But to do this, Tulip has to reunite the Midnight Suns, or more specifically, she's actually looking for the Ghost Rider, and she actually winds up getting two for the price of one, because if you have not been keeping up with Benjamin Percy's Ghost Rider series, whether it's the initial one or Final Vengeance or whatever comes after that, basically what's been going on is that Johnny Blaze has been back as the Ghost Rider for the past couple of years, and Danny Ketch, while technically had become the spirit of corruption, we also have seen that while that story arc is still technically kind of in play, he is still a Ghost Rider, and he has also been reunited with Johnny Blaze during that Benjamin Percy-led series. That's why these two are together right now, and also they're brothers, so I mean, why wouldn't they hang out with one another? But the reason why they are more recently together, that is why. So I highly recommend, if you've not checked out Benjamin Percy's Ghost Rider, you should totally do that. But because we have both Johnny Blaze and Danny Ketch present in this, that means we got a lot of Midnight Suns going on, as the title would imply, but there's also another character that has to be brought in, and it's a character whose name has been thrown around quite a bit, Victoria Montesi. You may have noticed in some of the previous videos, or if you've been reading along with this, you probably may have heard the Montesi formula being brought up a couple of times. This is because this is a name that is actually tied to Victoria Montesi, a former member of the Midnight Suns. And if you actually read the Midnight Suns related titles back during the 90s, you probably would recognize the character. It's kind of weird, like she has a very long history with the Midnight Suns, but you would probably get more of her story in the Darkhold Pages from the Book of Sin series, also from the 90s. Yeah, well, she technically showed up in a lot of the other like Midnight Suns books. Man, I'll be honest with you, she didn't really do a lot in them. It was like one of those things like, and this was just because, once again, it was the 90s. So sometimes female characters, depending on who they were or how popular they were, they just were kind of there as window dressing more than anything else. And that's kind of what Victoria Montesi was for a while. You literally had to go to Darkhold Pages from the Book of Sin if you wanted to get any real character development from Victoria Montesi. Otherwise, you probably would see her in what was at the time Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, and there was a few issues there where she had a little more to do, but even then she was just kind of there, which I always kind of hated for her as a character. And it wasn't really until I believe it was the 2008-2009 Carnage series, or maybe it was more recent than that, she was there as well in a more active role. So yeah, that's one of those things I always tell people. If you're not terribly well read on who Victoria Montesi is, I'm not going to blame you, because Marvel has never really done a good job of trying to ingratiate fans to her, because they keep her hidden in the weirdest of places. But the whole trick with Victoria, what kind of is her claim to fame, is that her family is incredibly tied to the Darkhold, in that where normally the Darkhold is able to corrupt people very easily just upon being in its presence, Victoria is actually pretty damn resistant to it. It's because she's already kind of slick corrupted by it. She is, for all intents and purposes, a daughter of Chthon himself, the very creator of the Darkhold, a dark entity, a dark elder god that has existed since time immemorial in the Marvel Comics universe. She was immaculately conceived by Chthon. Technically, her father was a sterile man and could not seed a child in a woman, and he used the Darkhold in a bargain with Chthon in order to be able to seed a child with his wife. But unfortunately, instead of Chthon allowing Vittorio Montesi to seed a child that would ultimately become Victoria, he instead seeded the child himself. That is how Victoria was born, why she has such a deep connection to the Darkhold. Victoria is brought into the mix, so you, for all intents and purposes, have the OG Midnight Suns riding together again in an effort to take down Blade, who has lost his whole damn mind. Another thing we can't discount is the fact that Victoria also seems to have Lilith, the mother of demons, in her back pocket. Now, we don't know exactly what it is she has done in order to have Lilith so willing to help her at a moment's notice, but I think it is something that is probably going to pay dividends when they face off with Blade, because Lilith, for those who are unfamiliar, is, for all intents and purposes, the central antagonist of the Midnight Suns. They literally formed to stop her back in the 90s. So the idea that Victoria has somehow brokered a sort of deal with Lilith that would allow her to summon her at will, and Lilith just be ready to fight for Victoria, I think it says something that Victoria has made some deals. She has worked that Darkhold in some ways that we haven't seen depicted quite yet in a comic, which, to be fair, for a character who has been around as long as she has not been in very many comics by comparison to some other characters who have been around since the 90s. But I think it's safe to say that this is not the last time we're going to see Lilith. She will likely be instrumental in stopping Blade, and if anyone could do it, Lilith would have the ability to do so. Granted, Blerd has leveled himself up a bit since then, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go check out this video up in the top right corner. I don't know whether or not Morbius will play into this any at all, because Morbius was yet another person who was a part of the Midnight Suns, but this is going to be about as close to an OG Midnight Suns lineup as you're probably going to get. As for the Black Panther side of things, Black Panther, as we saw in Blood Hunt #1, was transformed into a vampire. He was turned, and technically the turn didn't really fully take place until Blood Hunt #2. But in this, we actually see why Blerd turned Black Panther. Blerd wants someone to infiltrate Wakanda and obtain something for him. He doesn't really ever say exactly what it is he is seeking, but he is basically speaking to T'Challa as if he were some sort of Force ghost and trying to get T'Challa to do what he needs done. And this entire issue is really just kind of more about the internal struggle of, T'Challa trying not to fully give in to becoming a vampire, to try not to drink blood, to try not to harm any of his Wakandan brothers and sisters and MBs and whatnot. He is honestly just trying to not lose his whole mind in the place of his birth. And also at the same time, well, initially he's not necessarily seeking help. He does wind up getting some aid from Shuri. And this was honestly something that was kind of teased in Eva Ewing's finale of her Black Panther series. But when we get right down to it, Black Panther is there, Shuri is there, and while she's trying to help, T'Challa is more afraid that he's going to harm her. And that's really all there is to the story here. And I make it sound as though this is a bad thing, but this is actually a very good thing, because I feel like that is what this story needed to be. It needs to be a character study on T'Challa. He is becoming a vampire. He is also becoming an anathema to his culture, because Bast does not abide such things as vampires. And the fact that he returned home is, even though it was technically to no fault of his own, is still something that Bast can't stand by. And even when he's in the Wakandan ancestral plane, the past Black Panthers are not happy with him either. So this is, once again, it's just a character study on everything that T'Challa is trying to deal with on top of being a vampire at this point. And I really like what Cheryl did with this. And once again, like I said before, that I've never read a whole heap of a lot of Cheryl's work, but this has made me an even bigger fan of hers. Just how she is able to write T'Challa in such a way that it feels natural. It doesn't feel any or that much different from what Eva Ewing was doing, and it doesn't feel unlike T'Challa on the whole, where, sometimes I feel like that is a barrier for entry for a lot of writers with Black Panther, is that sometimes they just don't get the voice of Black Panther, the way he should be speaking, the way he should be carrying himself. That was a huge criticism of the John Ridley Black Panther series. A lot of people felt that he just didn't feel like Black Panther. And that one is kind of a weird one for me. Yeah, it's kind of a yay and a nay. There's a lot of weird stuff. It was one of those deconstructionist stories that, while by and large, I didn't hate it, I didn't love it either. But, yeah, I like what Cheryl's doing here. And honestly, I don't know whether or not she will be writing the Black Panther series going forward once Blood Hunt is done. She is kind of implied that she doesn't really know either. I saw on Twitter where she basically stated that that's up to editorial and she has no say in it whatsoever, but she is definitely interested in continuing Black Panther if it is offered to her. So I hope that Marvel, I don't know, I know some people from Marvel watch my stuff. If you want my 2 cents on it, you should probably hire her. If you're not gonna have Eve, you need somebody, and right now I think this is your best bet right here. But yeah, once again, that's just me. I like what we got here. If Blood Hunt, if all the tie-ins were more like this, I would be so much more interested. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Like I said, I feel like, yeah, this is probably going to be the way. Because once again, my time is sacrosanct. And I don't have time to be reading 52 million tie-ins for a story that is, well, I think is technically good, is still a lot. Even for something that I love, like I even get, for as much as I love X-Men, I get sick and tired of X-Men sometimes. Like, it's like, okay, y'all got too many books. Y'all got too many goddamn books going on. So yeah, it's not like oh, this is just because it's Jed Mac. No, it's not. I love Jed MacKay. But I mean, once again, you can have too much of a good thing. Eventually, you start to drown from it, and that's kind of what I'm worried about is going to happen with this. Like, I have a feeling, because this is what happened with Night Terrors over on DC. It was like, oh man, this is actually kind of fun. Oh wait, it's way too much of this. And it's like, okay, well, I'm done, I'm out. That's kind of how it felt. But I feel like, yeah, we're just gonna stick to these tie-ins. I don't think we're gonna be taking a look at too many other ones unless like they just really do something that knocks my socks off. But yeah, right now as it stands, the hierarchy is Blood Hunt proper, and then we've got Midnight Suns, Black Panther, and we got Dracula. I think that that's enough. I don't think we need this. Doctor Strange, I might keep up with just for no other reason. The fact that it seems like that's also where we're getting a lot of Blade. So I want to see what Jed McKay does to justify what Blade is doing. Like I'd like that's one of those things where I feel like the closer we get to that, the sooner we learn what Blade is actually trying to do, I think the better this is gonna go. But I have some very deep concerns because, you know, that's kind of an issue I feel has happened with comics for a long time, is events, they kind of go a couple of different ways. They either start off kind of and then get good towards the end, or they start off really good and get really towards the end. And then sometimes they're just not good at all. I mean, there's those happen, but I'm worried that this is going to become that it's going to get by the time we get to the end of it. That's my fear. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.